Hello and welcome back to another Woodtones video here. So I thought it would be good to continue the 5-string bass here, and I want to, just to start off, correct a little error I made in the last video. Last episode I said that this line right here was going to be where the front of the bridge sat, but turns out I forgot that that's actually where the front of the saddle is going to be, and this little gap here affects intonation, so I have to correct for that, and this little gap here is 5/16. So let's actually get a true measurement here. 5/16. Right here is where the front of the bridge is actually going to sit. So my bad for that, but it's good to be thorough and point these errors out so that way people understand and know what's going on a bit more. But thankfully, since the bridge has to move forward, that actually works in my favor, because that means that the bridge is going to be a bit more supported as it slides up. The X brace is narrow, which means they sit more under the bridge itself. Might kill tone a little bit, but on a bass the vibrations are so low that basses work a little differently than guitars because they vibrate at such a low frequency. So let's continue onwards. To begin, the next brace I am actually going to add is going to be the bridge plate right here. Forgot what it was for a second. Bridge plate normally sits in between the X braces and sits directly under the bridge inside the guitar, something like this. The wider you make it, the stronger the instrument is, but the more it kills the tone. So I am going to mark out with a pencil here so I can differentiate. I want the front of the bridge plate to sit roughly 3/4 of an inch forward of the bridge, and the bridge itself at its longest point is 2 1/4 inches. So coming down from this line here, 2 1/4 tells me right where the bridge base is going to sit, and I'm going to extend it roughly 1 1/4 inches from that point, just because this, like I said last episode, this thing is going to be under a crazy load. So the bridge plate is going to be overall, it looks like it shall be 4 3/8 inches. And it's going to have to taper to match these X brace lines here. So there are different materials you can make the bridge plate out of. Some people use Indian rosewood, some people use maple, others use Osage orange, or granadillo works well. I'm actually going to use granadillo because I have that on hand and it's a hardwood. But the bridge plate material itself can affect the tone of the instrument depending on what wood you pick. So I got my granadillo plate here, and it's, as you can see, quite a bit more massive than the piece I'm going to need from it. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to lay it out roughly where I want it. Let's just draw a straight line down here at the bottom so I can roughly guesstimate right where the plate is going to cross and end at this X brace point. So let's do that at the top too. This is just so when I lay the piece over top, I can kind of see right where I need it to sit and how big I need it to be. So, following the lines, it's going to sit right there. And let's slowly slide it over till I can just see the line, almost covering it, right there. So, let's come down. I remember it's 4 3/8. Just mark that on the sheet here. 4 3/8 comes to right there. And now since I have the line there, I can just scribe it out with my ruler. Now it's okay if the grain isn't perfectly straight here. It's actually a little bit better if it's not, just because the bridge plate, what it does is it helps supports the bridge pins, and as the strings put under tension, it pulls up harder and harder into the bridge plate. So if you have all 5 balls in a line, it's going to create a huge splitting force right on one grain line. Whereas if you skew the piece just a little bit, it will actually divert the pressure onto different grain lines and keep everything from splitting. So let's mark this out here. I'm just going to cut out a square to begin with, and then once I got that, I can trim it out to the trapezoidal shape I need once I get a more manageable piece. Alright, I'm going to go cut this square out and BRB. So I got the plate cut out here. The plate, normally on a guitar you want the bridge plate to be somewhere about 0.1 to 0.15 inches thick. This one is, let's see, 3/16 roughly, about 1/8 to 3/16. It changes a little bit, but that's alright. The thicker it is, the stronger it'll be, but the more it'll kill the tone. So anyway, let's lay this out right where I want it. That's right about good. So now that I got the bridge plate laid onto the brace right where I want it, I can take my pen, mark right at the top where the inside of the brace is, and mark at the bottom where the inside is, and do the same on the other side here. Mark on the inside, and eyeball it, mark on the inside. Now that you got 4 points, just connect the dots. That's what a lot of guitar building is, really. Drawing lines and connecting dots. So, I have the bridge plate marked out what it's going to look like, and I'm going to go cut that out on the bandsaw. I know there is a slight knot here, but that is okay, because I'm putting it more towards the front of the bridge plate. The string ball ends won't sit on it, they'll sit back here somewhere. So there won't be any pressing force directly on this knot. Plus, if you fill it with a little bit of glue and sawdust, it'll stabilize it very well. So it's in an inconspicuous spot and it can be stabilized. But anyway, I'm going to cut out the bridge plate and be right back. So I got the piece cut out here, and what you want to do when you're cutting it out is make sure to ghost the outside just a hair of the line. And then once you get it cut, then slowly sand down to the line. You want to get as close, if not precisely at that line, as you humanly can. Just because you want this brace bridge plate to sit very close to the X brace. In fact, you want it tight enough that a solid glue joint can be had between the edges of the bridge plate and the X brace itself. So now that that is all good to go, I got my hide glue heating again. Once again, using hide glue just because it clamps itself. It's very fast acting, and if there's any errors whatsoever later, it can be pulled apart and re-glued because the glue sticks to itself. So just open up my glue pot here, and let's show you this. You want to spread it thickly on the bridge plate just because this is going to be a big glue job here. I'm actually gonna pour a little bit out. This is just like a little baby bottle or something. I forget exactly what, tiny pickling jar. There we go. Let's get all that on there. And spread it around. You want to leave the hide glue a little thick so there's some squeeze out in case you don't quite get it right. But it's very easy for hide glue to get squeegeed out completely, especially with a stiffer brush. I've found that hide glue just kind of doesn't spread the best with the stiff brush. It just kind of smears and then sits thickly in one area and is too sparse in another. So just spreading it on the edges of the bridge plate here. You want to make sure these are well covered too, so that they clamp down well to the X brace. So got that all glued. Since the timer is ticking, put it in the spot and slide it in, and just rub it around a little bit. It'll help hold the hide glue itself. Then take 2 pieces of wood to clamp it. There we go. Just take some of the wood here, any scrap pieces you may have, and build it up just so that you can clamp down the edges. That's the part I'm worried about the most. And once again, using the intellectual clamping method. There we go. So just reach in underneath that, make sure the bridge plate is pushed up tight. And there we go. Bridge plate is now clamped, and it should just let it sit for at least half an hour or so. Just because it is such a wide surface, it will take time to cure all the way to the center. Alright, so just finished letting it dry. I gave it a bit more time than I said. Oh, this is stuck down. That's not good. Desperate times call for desperate measures. There we go. Yep, a little bit of glue right on there. Accidentally glued it down.
Whoopsie!
So, That is still curing, but it's okay to unclamp now because hide glue, like I said, contracts as it cools. So it'll clamp itself and hold it down. Next up is more braces. I'm going to do the tone bar this time. So the tone bars are also a little interesting in that they are kind of oddly placed, in that they're not fully perpendicular to the X brace here, and they're not fully perpendicular parallel to the bridge face. They're kind of at an angle, and whatever angle you want is kind of up to you, but just a hair off of perpendicular to the X brace is usually good. So I'm gonna go sand a slight angle into this brace, and then I'll be right back. Alright, got the angle shaved on the tone bar. Now it's just a matter of finding where it's gonna sit and trimming it down. You want it to come very close to the other side of the X brace, but not fully touching it. You don't have to be too pretty with the end here. You will be sanding it down, shaving it a bit, so it doesn't have to be too pretty. But there's that. And I'm going to be gluing on a second tone bar. This one I'm going to angle slightly back from the other, actually. Just because I have a superstition it helps with the tone. I'm not able to prove it, but I just feel like it does. So I'm going to sand this one and be right back. Alright, so I got the tone bar sanded smooth so it butts up against the X brace very nicely. I'm going to put it very close to the other tone bar up there, just because of the angle. I want it to support a lot of the top, but I don't have a ton of room. So let's mark it off. I'm going to shave it off, cut it right there. And there we are. So we got one sitting there, and one sitting there. And I'll probably add a tiny one in. Actually, I'll do that right now. Let's add a tiny guy in right about there, just to finish off this little area here, make sure it's nice and strong. Alright, so there are my tone bars. It's a little oddly shaped, I know, and it's a little different than what you're probably used to seeing if you've worked with guitars or looked inside one at all. But that's just the way I do it. So just gotta heat up my glue again. It cooled off a little bit, and then I'll glue those down.